They set the table so nice that night. Napkins folded into triangles, wine glasses sparkling like they hadn't been touched in years, and the roast smelled like something out of a magazine. Laughter danced through the room, and for a moment I let myself believe everything was just fine. My daughter raised her glass, smiled at me with those familiar eyes, and said softly, "Is the $2,000 I send you every month enough, Mom?" I blinked. I smiled, even. Then I said it, gentle but confused. "What money?" And I swear to you, that moment changed everything. The forks paused midair. The laughter died without a sound. My son's hand tightened around his glass, and his wife's face drained of every drop of color. You could feel it then, like a thread snapping inside the room. One question, one answer, and the truth started to bleed through the silence. "I don't know where you're watching from, but I'm grateful you're here. It means more than you know." Telling this story isn't easy. It still sits heavy in my chest, like something I haven't quite finished unpacking. Maybe you've been there too, smiling through dinner, nodding through conversations, while your heart is quietly breaking. Maybe someone you trusted offered help with one hand while the other was already reaching into your pockets. They don't always come loud. Sometimes they come kindly. And when the truth comes out, it doesn't always come with yelling. Sometimes it arrives on a quiet plate, at a quiet table, in front of the very people who said they'd protect you. If you've ever lived through something like that, where someone twisted your trust and made it feel like love, I want you to know you're not alone here. Tell me your story if you feel ready. And if the words are too heavy, just write, "I see now." That's enough. It means I've met someone who understands. It happened one afternoon, just before the weather turned cold. I was sweeping the front steps like I always did, careful but maybe too proud to admit I should have asked for help. One minute I was upright, thinking about dinner, and the next the world tilted. I remember the sound my body made against the concrete, more than the pain. It was like something inside me cracked before the bone ever did. I broke my hip. They said I was lucky it wasn't worse. Maybe. But luck is strange when you suddenly need help just to sit up straight. The hospital stay wasn't long, but the healing after felt endless. I went from cooking every day to waiting for someone to hand me a glass of water. And when I came home, my son stepped in. He and his wife were kind at first. Gentle voices, soft reassurances. "Don't worry about a thing," they said. "We'll take care of the bills, the appointments, all of it. Just rest." I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to be difficult. And truth be told, part of me felt ashamed. I've always handled things. I've always been the one to budget every cent, to stretch meals, to pay on time. But that fall made me feel like something in me had slipped too. I let them help. I let go of the reins. My daughter called when she could. She lives out of town and I never blamed her for that. She's got her own family, her own life. Still, she made it a point to check in every week and asked what I needed. I always told her I was fine, that her brother and his wife were handling everything. She said she was sending support each month to help cover groceries and prescriptions. I told her thank you. I told her they were putting it to good use. At least, that's what I believed. We all agreed it was best this way, or so I thought. It made me feel a little less guilty, knowing she was doing her part and they were managing things here. It felt like we were still a family, pulling together. I didn't know I was being left out of the very decisions that affected me. I didn't know I was the last one to see the truth. I didn't want to be a burden. I just didn't want to fall again. And somehow, while I was learning to walk again, I didn't realize I'd already fallen in a different way, into a silence that made it easy for them to take what they wanted, without ever asking. At first, it was little things, barely worth noticing, or so I told myself. The fridge didn't seem as full as it used to be. The leftovers I always counted on for lunch were suddenly smaller, packed into thinner containers. They stopped buying the snacks I liked. No more sweet crackers or the little yogurt cups I used to enjoy in the evenings. When I asked about it, they'd just smile and say, "We're budgeting, Mom, trying to be smart with spending." Or they'd say they were saving for something big, like a home upgrade or a trip they'd been planning for a while. And I'd nod along, pretending it made perfect sense. The lights were off earlier too. They'd walk through the house clicking them out behind me, like I was wasting something I didn't earn. I'd be reading in the living room and suddenly be sitting in the dark because they thought I'd fallen asleep. And the car, they never seemed to have gas when I had a doctor's appointment. They'd sigh, say they'd forgotten to fill up, and I'd wait until the last minute while they figured it out. I started dreading asking for anything, even if it was something small. Then my prescriptions began running short. One month I opened the bottle and knew it wasn't a full refill. I didn't say anything. I told myself maybe the pharmacy made a mistake. But the next month, it happened again. And again. I started spacing the pills out, trying to stretch what I had. It wasn't safe. I knew that. But I didn't want to be a problem. They were already doing so much. At least that's what I kept telling myself. I stopped asking for extras. No magazines, no new socks. No little things I used to pick up for myself at the store. I told them I didn't need new slippers, even though mine had a tear at the side. I told them the bread was fine, even when it tasted like it had been frozen and thawed twice. I told myself maybe they were struggling too. Maybe this was just what families do when times get hard. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I just couldn't name it yet. It was like a draft coming through a closed window. You can't always see where it's coming from, but you feel it all the same. I wasn't angry then. Not yet. I was just quiet, and maybe a little ashamed for wondering if the people I trusted were the very ones letting me go without. There comes a point where you stop trusting your instincts, especially when everyone around you keeps smiling like nothing's wrong. I started thinking maybe I was just tired, maybe the pills weren't light, maybe I'd forgotten how many I'd taken. I stood in front of the bathroom cabinet one morning, holding the bottle in my hand, trying to remember if I'd already taken one. I stared at the label for a long time. It scared me a little, that moment. Not because I thought I was sick, but because I wondered if maybe I really was slipping. Maybe this was just what getting older felt like. Watching things slowly blur and not knowing if it's the world or your mind that's fading. I didn't tell anyone. I kept it to myself. I started writing things down in a little notebook, tracking my refills, the dates, what I ate for breakfast. I told myself it was just to stay sharp, just in case. But it was more than that. It was a quiet way of holding on to something, my memory, my mind, my sense of what was true. Then I saw it. My son had left his phone on the kitchen table. The screen lit up, and there it was, an Instagram photo. Him and his wife in Miami, standing on a beach, sunglasses on, smiling wide. The caption said something about needing a break, about treating ourselves. I stared at that screen until it went dark. I didn't say a word. When he came back in, I just handed him the phone. He said nothing about it. Neither did I. But I noticed the new watch on his wrist the next day, gold and heavy, something I knew he couldn't afford on his salary. I saw the takeout boxes stacked in the trash, the kind I'd never seen in our house before. I saw the package arrive at the door with designer shoes his wife ordered, laughing when she opened it like she hadn't a care in the world. And still, I swallowed it. All of it. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe it wasn't my place to question how they spent their money. That maybe the support my daughter sent had dried up. Maybe they were doing everything with their own money now. Maybe they were tired too. Maybe I was just being paranoid. It's strange how quickly you can talk yourself out of the truth when you're afraid to face it. I didn't want to believe they'd lie to me. I didn't want to believe the people I loved could smile at me in the morning, then turn around and live like I didn't exist by noon. So I nodded when they said we couldn't afford to refill all my prescriptions this month. I smiled when they served me half portions and said we were all cutting back. I even said thank you. And then I sat in my room with the notebook in my lap, wondering if the numbers I'd written down were wrong, or if maybe I was just too old to read them right. It had been a while since I heard her voice, at least in that way. She called late one afternoon while I was folding towels. I answered, expecting the usual check-in, but this time her voice had a softness I hadn't heard in months. She said, "I'm coming home, Mama. I miss you." Just like that. Like it had been sitting on her chest waiting to be said. My eyes watered before I could even answer. I told her I couldn't wait, that I'd make her favorite tea and keep the kettle warm. She laughed and said not to fuss. She'd be home soon, and that was enough. When I told my son, he looked surprised, almost like he didn't know. Then he nodded and said, "We should have dinner here. Make it nice for her." His wife agreed. She even started planning the menu right away, listing things off like it was a celebration. Roast chicken, garlic bread, sweet potatoes with brown sugar. The kind of meal you don't make unless company's coming or you've got something to prove. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled, grateful to feel like something good was finally on its way. The day of the dinner came faster than I expected. I heard the clatter in the kitchen early, pots moving, spices hitting the counter, laughter between the two of them that felt a little too loud. I stayed in my room for most of the afternoon, trying to stay out of the way, smoothing my hair in the mirror more times than I needed to. I wore the blouse she once said made my eyes look soft. I sat by the window waiting, watching the sun move across the living room floor until I heard the car pull up. She walked in carrying flowers, the kind she used to pick from the field behind our old house when she was little. She hugged me tight, longer than usual, and I held her like I didn't want to let go. I could smell the city on her. Perfume, train air, something faintly unfamiliar, and it made me realize how long it had been. Dinner was beautiful. The table was set with candles, little folded napkins, even wine glasses they hadn't used in years. They asked me to sit at the head of the table, and for a while, I just listened. Laughter flowed easy. Photos were taken. Her stories filled the room. My son was quiet, but his wife picked up the slack, complimenting the food, talking about how proud they were to have family all together. I nodded, smiled, let it all wash over me like warm light. But something in her eyes kept tugging at me. My daughter. She smiled, but it didn't reach all the way. There was a flicker of something behind it. Hesitation. Maybe worry. I couldn't place it. But every time she looked at me, it was like she was waiting for something. Like there was a question sitting behind her lips that hadn't found its way out yet. And in that moment, sitting there between the roast chicken and the candles, I felt the air start to shift. Just a little. I didn't know why yet, but I knew this dinner wasn't just about catching up. There was something else beneath the surface, something quiet, waiting, and about to speak. We had just finished the second round of food, plates pushed back slightly, napkins resting on laps, the kind of fullness that makes a room feel slower, softer. The wine had started to loosen everyone's words, and the stories were spilling out now, old memories from childhood, who broke the porch swing, who burned the biscuits that one Christmas. I leaned back in my chair, watching them all, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. For a moment I forgot everything else. I just felt present. Part of something, part of them. Then she looked at me. My daughter. She was holding her wine glass, swirling it gently, watching me with that same warm smile she had when she used to crawl into bed with me after a nightmare. I smiled back without hesitation. I remember that clearly. I smiled. And then she said it. "Is the $2,000 I send you every month enough, Mama?" Just like that. Casual. Light. Like she was checking if I liked the flavor of tea she sent in the mail. I blinked. I looked at her, then looked around the table. I felt the shape of the words before I spoke them, but I said them anyway, quiet but certain. "What money?" That's when the room changed. Her smile dropped, not fast, not dramatic, but slowly, like it was melting off her face. My son's hand, which had been resting on his glass, tightened. His wife shifted in her chair, then reached for her napkin, even though her lips were already clean. The laughter from just minutes earlier vanished, like someone had blown out all the candles at once. The air felt heavy, but no one moved. No one spoke. It was only then that I noticed the fork. It had fallen from her hand, barely making a sound against the tablecloth, but it lay there like it meant something. Her eyes didn't leave mine. Not yet, but I could see her breathing change, slow, deliberate, and something behind her face, behind all the calm, looked like it was about to break. I sat there, still. My heart beat steady but hard, like it knew something my mind hadn't caught up to yet. I glanced toward my son. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring down at his plate like the mashed potatoes might explain something. His wife cleared her throat once, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, twice, like that might make the question disappear. But it didn't. The silence that followed didn't stretch. It dropped, heavy, sudden. And in that space, Every little moment from the past year started to rearrange themselves in my head. The empty pill bottles, the frozen bread, the new watch, the missed gas money. It all came rushing in like a wave I didn't even know was building. And still, I said nothing else. I just sat there, with the weight of one simple question now sitting between us like another guest at the table. She didn't look at me right away. My daughter turned her head, slow but sure, and fixed her eyes on her brother. Her voice was calm, but there was steel in it. The kind of cold that doesn't come from anger, but from knowing you've been lied to by someone who once shared your childhood. She said, "You told me," she said she didn't want it anymore. He didn't answer at first, just stared at his plate like he was trying to remember how to speak. His mouth opened, then closed again. Then he gave this soft, nervous laugh, like the kind you use when you're caught doing something you think you can talk your way out of. "I thought," he started, then shook his head. "I mean, we figured it wasn't really necessary anymore." She seemed fine. "She seemed fine?" she repeated, still looking at him. "Is that what you told yourself when you cashed the checks?" That's when his wife jumped in. Her voice was softer, sugar-coated, like she was trying to smooth the edges of something sharp. "Maybe it was just a mix-up," she said, looking at me, then at my daughter. "Maybe the payments didn't go through. Or maybe something got lost in communication. These things happen." But I didn't answer her. I didn't say a word. I just stared. First at my son, then at the woman he married. I watched their faces, not the words, not the excuses, but the way their eyes moved, how their fingers fidgeted, how they couldn't look at me for more than a second at a time. And inside, something began to shift. I felt it. Not a sudden scream or rage, but something quieter. Something heavier. The trust I had built over years, the kind that came from late-night fevers, scraped knees, home-cooked meals, and whispered promises, it cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, but clean, like glass under pressure. My daughter sat back in her chair, arms crossed now, her lips pressed tight. You could feel the anger beneath her skin, but she didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her disappointment filled the space louder than anything else. My son reached out, his palm half open, like he was about to explain something complicated, something that might make this all make sense. But I didn't want his words. Not then. What could he say? That he thought I'd never notice? That I'd keep taking half portions and skipping medication while they used my daughter's love to fund their dinners and vacations? No. I didn't want explanations. I wanted the truth, but not from their mouths. I wanted it in the silence that followed. In the way they avoided my eyes, in the way they shifted in their chairs like children caught with their hands in something they never earned. I stayed still. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, with my hands resting in my lap, my back straight, and my eyes fixed on the people I once trusted with my comfort, my care, and the pieces of my life I could no longer carry on my own. That's when I knew. The truth had been there all along, folded between receipts I never saw and phone calls I never got to hear. It had been growing, quietly, while I was learning to walk again. And now it was sitting at my table, staring me in the face. She stood up so suddenly, her chair slid back against the hardwood with a sound that made everyone flinch. Her voice was different now. No warmth, no hesitation. Just a quiet command that didn't need repeating. "We're talking outside, now." She didn't wait for anyone to answer. She turned and walked straight to the front door, and for a few seconds, no one moved. My son looked stunned, like he thought she wouldn't actually say it. Not in front of everyone. His wife sat frozen, her fork still in her hand, trembling just slightly. I didn't say a word. I pushed my chair back gently, slowly. My knees ached from sitting too long, but I stood anyway and followed them out. The night air hit my face like a truth I wasn't ready to breathe in yet. The driveway lights cast long shadows across the cement. My daughter was already standing near the steps, arms crossed, waiting for them. They came out last, my son first, then his wife behind him. Her arms wrapped around herself like the chill in the air had just found her. But it wasn't the weather, it was what she knew was coming. My daughter turned to face them. Her eyes sharper than I'd seen since she was a teenager, standing up to someone twice her size. She pointed at her brother, and her voice didn't shake. "You told me," she said, "she didn't need the money. That she wanted you to use it for things she couldn't handle herself. You said she insisted." I believed you. He tried to respond, but she didn't give him space. You've been stealing from her for almost 2 years. Her voice cracked slightly on that last word, but it wasn't weakness. It was fury wrapped in heartbreak. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. It wasn't stealing, he said, as if saying it out loud might make it true. We were helping. We were just keeping things simple. She laughed once, bitter, quiet, like something inside her had snapped. Simple? She asked, while she cut pills in half and pretended she wasn't hungry? While you posted vacation photos and wore a new watch to dinner? While she sat in the dark because you told her the power bill was too high? His wife stepped forward, her voice trembling. It wasn't like that. We just thought it made sense to keep it all together. We didn't use it for anything crazy. You used it for everything but her. My daughter said, sharp and steady. You let her go without, while I kept sending money thinking I was helping. You lied to both of us. I stood to the side, close enough to hear everything, but far enough to watch them clearly, like I was seeing them for the first time, with no blur, no haze of love or obligation in the way. And I realized then, all the small moments I had ignored hadn't been small at all. They were parts of a story I hadn't been allowed to read until now. My son looked down at the ground. He didn't argue anymore. His wife turned her face away, like the shadows might hide her from what she had done. And I just stood there, quiet, steady, the same way I did the day I learned how to walk again after my fall. Because I knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. This was just where the storm began to speak. I stood there for a long moment, just listening. The night around us had gone still. No wind, no passing cars, not even the soft hum of crickets. Just the raw quiet that falls when truth has been spoken, and no one dares to move. My daughter's voice had already carved through the air like a blade, but what needed to be said next? It had to come from me. I stepped forward slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't lean on anything. I didn't need to, not anymore. I looked at him. My son, the boy I raised with tired hands and sleepless nights, the one who used to fall asleep in my arms and call me his whole world. I looked at the woman beside him, the same one I welcomed into my house like my own, fed from my table, trusted to care for me when I couldn't lift the laundry basket without wincing. And I let the silence hold one more breath before I finally spoke. I said, I trusted you. I let you into my home, not because I was weak, but because I believed you'd do right by me, and you used me like a checkbook with a soft voice. His eyes welled up. I saw the tears coming, the ones he thought might buy back some of what he lost. But I didn't stop. Not now. You sat at my table. You listened to my prayers. You watched me ration medicine and still told me we couldn't afford more. And all that time, you let me believe it was life being hard, not you being cruel. He looked like he wanted to say something, but no words came. His wife clutched his arm like he might collapse. But I wasn't finished. You didn't just steal money, you stole my peace. You took the part of me that once slept without fear, that once believed I was safe in my own home. Do you know what it feels like to watch someone you love walk through your life with quiet hands, taking things you can't get back? My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. I let each word fall exactly where it belonged, measured and certain. There were days I thought I was losing my mind, that maybe I was too old, too forgetful. But I wasn't. I was just too kind. And you counted on that. His tears came then, running fast down his face, but I didn't move to wipe them. I stood my ground, steady and sure. I won't shout. I won't throw you out with noise. That's not who I am. But don't confuse my quiet for forgiveness. Don't mistake my calm for acceptance. Because tonight, you showed me who you really are. I looked over at my daughter then, and for the first time that evening, I let the grief show in my eyes. Not weakness, not pity. Just the ache of knowing the love you gave was placed in the wrong hands. And when I turned back to face them again, I finished with this. I may be old, but I am not blind and I am not foolish. You taught me a hard lesson, one I never wanted to learn, but now that I have, I promise you I won't forget. And with that, I turned away, not because I was done feeling, but because I was done explaining. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that soothes you. It was the kind that lingers after something breaks, where even the walls seem to hold their breath. I stayed in bed for a while, listening. I could hear her. My daughter, already moving around in the kitchen, the soft clink of a mug on the counter, the sound of her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was calm, low, but there was a sharpness to it. The kind of focus that comes when someone has decided they've had enough. I didn't go in. I let her work. I knew by the way she paced, the way she asked short, direct questions, that she was getting answers. She was always the one who asked questions nobody wanted to answer. Even as a child, she never let things slide. And now she was doing what needed to be done, not with fury, but with clarity. By mid-morning, she brought me a cup of tea and sat beside me. She didn't sugarcoat it. She opened her tablet, showed me a screen filled with numbers, and told me what she found. $48,000. That's what was missing. Not just gone, but moved, taken bit by bit, over months. The payments she'd been sending went straight into his account. From there, they disappeared into purchases, travel, things that had nothing to do with my needs. She showed me the bank statements. I saw the names of stores I'd never been to, restaurants I hadn't stepped foot in, plane tickets, spa treatments. I saw the withdrawals, the transfers, the way the numbers dropped without reason. And I just sat there, staring at the proof of something I had felt but never wanted to see laid out so plain. She had already spoken to the bank, put a hold on anything tied to my name. She had already called her lawyer, an old college friend, and scheduled a meeting. She told me not to worry. She said, "We'll fix this, Mom. I promise you we'll fix it." I nodded. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I was too tired for tears. Tired of doubting myself, tired of swallowing questions, tired of wondering if my silence had allowed all of this to happen. And maybe it had. Maybe I had been too quiet for too long, but not anymore. I let her handle it. I let her dig through papers, call banks, follow trails I never would have known how to follow. I sat by the window, wrapped in my robe, hands folded over one another, watching the leaves move gently in the yard. I let her do what I couldn't, and I didn't feel small for it. I felt something else, something like strength, something like relief. She printed everything out, put it in a folder with my name on it, and set it on the table. She said I didn't have to open it if I didn't want to. I told her I would. Just not yet. I didn't need to see every line to understand the damage. I had already lived it. But what mattered now wasn't what was lost, it was what I wouldn't let go of again. And this time, I had someone in my corner, not pretending to help, not playing the part, but truly standing beside me. It didn't take yelling, it didn't take threats. Just truth, steady and clear, spoken by someone who still believed in doing right. And I knew then, with quiet certainty, that I had given my trust to the wrong person for too long. But I had raised the right one to help me take it back. They were gone by the end of the week. I don't remember if I asked them to leave or if they left on their own. Some endings don't need words. Sometimes the air between people shifts just enough that everyone knows it's time. He didn't look at me when he packed. His wife moved quietly, eyes low, saying very little, as if words might somehow make it worse. I didn't follow them from room to room, didn't stand in the doorway or ask where they were going. I just sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold, listening to drawers open and close. When the door shut behind them for the last time, I didn't move. I listened to the sound of silence settle back into the walls. But this time, it didn't feel hollow. It felt clean, like something heavy had been swept out. I exhaled in a way I hadn't in months, maybe years. My chest, which had been tight for so long I forgot it could be any other way, felt just a little lighter. That same afternoon, my daughter sat with me and we changed the locks. We called the lawyer again. She updated the power of attorney. We made sure everything with my bank and my name was mine again. My life, what's left of it, was placed gently back in my hands, and it felt strange, that weight. Not overwhelming, just unfamiliar. But I carried it all the same. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen and baked a pie. Just a small one, nothing fancy, apple with cinnamon the way I always liked. My hands moved slow, steady. I found the rhythm again. I cleaned out the pantry, got rid of expired cans, wiped down every shelf like I was brushing out the past. And then I opened the window and let the fresh air move through the house. I sat in the living room with a notebook in my lap. Not the one I used to track my pills, but a new one, clean, crisp pages. I wrote a little. A memory here, a thought there. Not for anyone else to read, just for me. To remind myself that my voice still had a place, even if it had gone quiet for a while. And when the sun began to set, I stepped out onto the porch. I looked out at the street, empty and peaceful. There were no cars in the driveway, no raised voices behind me, no heaviness hanging from the ceiling. Just a light breeze and the quiet sound of my own breathing, steady and unshaken. I smiled, not wide, not for show, just the kind that creeps in when something inside you feels settled again. Not because everything had been fixed, but because something had been reclaimed. Something that had been taken quietly, piece by piece, but now sat whole again in the center of me. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I was simply there, present, with nothing to hide, and nothing left to hand over to people who hadn't earned it. I don't hate them. I truly don't. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean handing back the keys, especially not to people who use them like crowbars, prying open parts of my life they had no right to touch. I still sleep with my door locked now, not out of fear, but out of understanding. If your kindness was mistaken for weakness, if someone you trusted took your love without asking, then you know what I mean. And if you've been there, if you've sat quietly and let the truth settle in your chest like a stone, I hope you'll tell me. Or just write, I'm healing now. That's more than enough. I do hope you'll subscribe, and if you're watching this with no one else around, just know you were never truly alone. Not then. Not now.